society treats men, that when folks are looking at it possibly being placed on someone that they don't see as a man, that now it's a threat to themselves. I don't know why my business has a whole lot to do with your business and your reality and who you are.
Or your relationship.
Right. But that's, so a lot of fear, but not just fear of the unknown, but fear of, well, what does that mean to me? What does that say about me? Another example, personally, I'm sorry, I'm going to pass it in just a second.
Oh, this is good.
Another example is if you're in a relationship with someone who's then identifying from whatever letter of the LGBT, right? So if I, as myself, am in a relationship with a man, and we walk down the street, and now you see us as gay. Now, if I transition, now my identity around being gay is challenged. I was in love with a man and identified as gay, and this is who I am, and I love this person. But when this person has transitioned to another sex, is being received as another gender, now my identity as a gay person, my identity as a straight person, my identity as a whomever it is as I'm walking down the street is now being challenged by me continuing to walk down the street with the same person. So we also lose relationships around transitioning.
That's good stuff there.
So it's a lot to do with one's personal identity and how that is challenged based on our realities.
Yeah, it's interesting how people burden you down with their issues. So, yeah. Ms. Cooper.
So you just said a lot of what I was thinking. I believe that one of the reasons why so many people, even some who fall under this LGBTQI apple pie thing, a lot of people have fear and have negativity towards trans-identified people. It's because they believe that we challenge their concept of what a man is or what a woman is. Because for many people, there is a hierarchy of who's more important than who. In society, if you're a man, then you have a higher place than a woman. And so as a trans woman, I have chosen to relegate myself to a lower status in society in some people's minds.
In their minds.
In some people's minds. And so for him, he has relegated himself. He has, what's a good word here? He has been blessed with the opportunity to raise his stature in society. And so some people can't understand why you choose this life for yourself.
And they don't understand it's not a choice.
It wasn't a choice for anyone to choose their gender. And for intersex people, often their parents chose their gender for them. So it is really, really important to understand that as trans-identified people, whatever that means to you, that in our own truth and living in our truth, it really doesn't infringe upon anybody else's thoughts and beliefs. At least it shouldn't.
Okay. And to support what you all are saying is, according to the Center for Civil and Human Rights, TLGBQ Institute's 2018 Southern Survey, 37.1% black trans respondents were most likely to have reported feeling unwelcomed in places of worship. So.
That's just the folks who reported it, Tracy.
There you go. There you go. So throughout the night, y'all going to hear me saying TLGBQ. I put the T first because I refuse to relegate myself last as people would want us to do. So if you're hearing some different letters in different positions, that's the reason why. All right. The National Center for Transgender Equality has reported transgender people face extraordinary levels of physical and sexual violence, whether on the streets, at school, or work, at home, or at the hands of government officials. More than 1 in 4 trans people has faced a bias-driven assault, and rates are higher for trans women and trans people of color. Why is this?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I really don't
even know where to begin to answer that, but I think the way that I see it is how we're defining human in some senses. I think when it comes to, for example, Black trans women, when I found out that our average life expectancy is 35, that to me said something about our humanity. Because when I started to dig, and I kind of became like this law and order investigator, and I started to dig into some of the cases of Black trans women who have been murdered, and I found just that. A lot of them have been murdered, left in ditches and alleys and things of that nature. And so I think that there's a general devaluing of our lives, and that people don't see us as humans, so they don't see us as being worthy of respect, worthy of protection, worthy of equality or equity. So I would say you have to kind of start at how people are defining who is human, and by extension, who's worthy of respect, who's worthy of protection, and all of those things. So that's my basic answer to that.
Okay, I have a follow-up to that. Okay. So according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, in the first 2 months of 2018, trans people, specifically trans women of color, were murdered at a rate of almost 1 per week. I mean, seriously. What has your experiences been on Morehouse College?
So when I very first started going to Morehouse, I did not identify as a woman. In fact, for the first 6 months, I was very adamant about the fact that I was a man, and just was going through a lot of internal struggles. So my first semester there really wasn't that bad, but by the fall of 2017, I started to acknowledge that I was a trans woman, and just came to grips with some things. And so when I first started, I quickly learned some hard life lessons, that, getting respect on an all-male campus as a woman, if they don't see you as a woman, you're not going to get that respect. So my initiation process was quite hard. People would make comments, they would make fun of me as I walked by, and it was just very hard to have any kind of high self-esteem about myself, because everywhere I looked, I was being disrespected or talked about. And this is in the very beginning of my transition. I'm 10 months into my medical transition now. And so at the very beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. I was still trying to figure out how to wear my clothes, how to carry myself as a woman. And so, but there was no grace for that. It was just, there was this expectation that if you say that you're this, you have to meet the standard today. And that's not realistic. And I think that pressure on Morehouse is magnified because you're dealing with these young Black men who are hyper-masculine, who do not know how to navigate their sexuality. They do not know how to navigate their gender identity. And so they make it their business to project that onto you, those traumas, those conflicts onto you. I would say now my experience on Morehouse is a little bit different. Some people know, some people don't know. By and large, I don't really experience disrespect. People may stare, but you never know why people are staring. And so I get a lot more respect now that I'm further down the road. But when I first started, it was very much, this sense of being the black sheep. And then when you look around the campus, there's imagery of men all around. They have banners that are hanging up on the buildings that say a Morehouse man is well dressed. Well, how is a Morehouse woman dressed? I mean, these are questions I'm asking. I'm asking myself, where is my blueprint? If you're a man at that school, there's already a trail that's been blazed for you. But if you're a woman, what do I even do? And beyond that, there are so many among the students, the faculty, the staff that don't even acknowledge that I'm a woman. I mean, to this day, my legal records, my medical records all say female, and I can still walk into a building today and be called sir and he and him. To say that it's insulting is an understatement.
How do you handle that, though?
Well, I use a few words from the special box when I have to, but I write letters. You know, I record it when it happens. So I have typically, like for example, if I go into a meeting that's of a sensitive nature with administration or staff, I have my phone secretly recording, so they don't know. So, and in Georgia, by law, you can actually do that. So if anything discriminatory is said, I can use it.
Need a paper trail and a track record,
Exactly.
honey.
Get the receipts. So
And invoices.
yes, and the invoices. But that's kind of how I handle it. I keep, you know, I'm very sure about myself. You know, if somebody disrespects me and says he or him, I quickly correct them. And then sometimes, not to be petty, but I actually have turned the table and I'm like, well, maybe I should call you a different pronoun and see how you feel about it. So that's always been interesting when I use that method, because it helps them to understand that, okay, I didn't like how that felt, so she must feel the same way. But you really, at Morehouse, it is not for the faint of heart. You have to have thick skin, and you have to know who you are if you're a woman on that campus. So.
Secure with who you are. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything?
So, one of the things I find most heartwarming is that all three of us have kind of religious backgrounds. And I don't often tell this as part of my story, but I attended seminary as well. I took classes at Virginia Union Seminary in Richmond, Virginia, not because I felt that I was called to preach, but just because I wanted to know more. And even in that, you didn't know that, did you? So, I found out a lot of things, and most importantly, I found out a lot of things about myself and how truth was so important and how God really was just about love. And that if I didn't love myself enough to be true to who I am, truth and love right back there together. If I didn't love myself enough to be true about who I was and to truly love myself, then I couldn't truly love anyone else. And I learned that more from seminary than I did in these streets. My transition, I moved to Atlanta. It'll be 10 years this time because I did some undergrad here a long time. I don't think you were born. You probably weren't born. I'm the eldest of the four of us. And my transition was just that. It was my transition, and I was totally fine with it. And I moved back to Georgia 10 years ago in October, and I was amazed and terrified at how y'all were treating us.
She said, y'all.
I was absolutely horrified at it. And so rather than sit back and just allow, in our own privilege, the four of us, we have certain privileges that some of our brothers and sisters don't. We could use words like passing privilege and education and all kinds of other things, and perhaps even access to cars and not having
economic
to rely
status
on MARTA and all kinds of other privileges that we could go over. But when I saw how people who have such similar experiences as I do, and we're so similar in a bunch of ways, but being untreated and horribly treated and violently treated, I felt that it was essential to take everything that I had learned, how to be a human, how to be a Christian, and how to be a woman, and use that to advocate for us. Because that's what I'm doing. That's what we're all doing. We're advocating for us. And I think for anyone who doesn't understand that when you have the privilege to have a microphone in front of you and an audience in front of you, that you have to understand you're not there for yourself. You're there for us. The first letter in us is you. And you is both singular, but it's also plural. And that's important to remember in advocacy. It is important to remember as singular as each of our experiences to us, it is also part of a larger community of people who, I promise you, have had similar experiences. They may come from a different place. The Social Security number is going to be different. Their place of origin is going to be different. But there's somewhere where your lives intersect in a way that when used and addressed properly has the opportunity to create greatness and to lead to health and to lead to wholeness in ways that many folks in our extended community may not have. There's something about us, I think, that innately, hopefully bonds us together.
when I think about the reasons that it may be that our community and then trans women most specifically endure violence, and I don't know, maybe I need to think about it more and talk about it more, but what comes up for me is control. Is this desire to control, and maybe even to the point of snuffing out, maybe even to the point of pushing off to these particular areas. No, you go and be over here and do that over there, and we'll stay over here. Almost, in a way to control where we are, who we are, what we're doing, and prevent in that way us from being. And being, depending on, from the death, maybe it is from being, but certainly exceeding, certainly excelling. And so, it hurts to think about, to talk about, right? So it's not something that I have to sit around on my couch and talk and think about a lot, but it feels a lot like, you beat a slave to make him do what you want him to do. It's an abusive relationship with not just someone, but with the world, in a way that the places that you go to, you're constantly receiving the messages that you don't belong here, we don't love you, we don't want you here. And what you spoke to is the privileges that not everybody in the community has to have that as an experience. And so the matter of trying to use that, as you said, to help out the folks that do.
Well, you said a mouthful when you said snuffing out. Not only are we being snuffed out by complete strangers on the streets, people within our families in some cases, there's also a thing called intimate partner violence that's snuffing trans people out left and right. Just a little quick story. I lived here in the late 80s, and I was in a domestic violent relationship with intimate partner violence, and so I escaped. I made a plan. I escaped to California. It was either California or Paris, France. I just knew that I had to get as far away as possible because all that getting back together and breaking up, that wasn't working for me. The bruises, wearing the heavy makeup, that was no longer working for me. So I made a plan, I escaped, and didn't look back. So not every trans person is able to make the escape. Not every trans person, has a plan. In a lot of cases, you have intimate partners who are killing their mate, and they're getting away with it because they're claiming they didn't know the person was trans. They had no idea. So intimate partner violence is something that's a scourge to our community. Anybody else want to talk about intimate partner violence?
I want to mention what your intimate partner violence in relation to what we were just talking about. And I don't think we consider how long people may have been in a relationship and may have been being abused and hurt over and over again before they were found dead. Yes. All right, so you won't ever hear about the hospital visits or the clinic visits or the homegirls or homeboys coming over to take care of you in the in-between, but you'll hear about the fact that one a week died for the first 3 months of the year, right? So intimate partner, just speaking intimate partner violence speaks to the ways in which folks may be experiencing that every day, but they just haven't been killed yet.
Killed yet. Okay. Anybody else?
So I work in public health. It was a very specific choice to specialize in HIV because HIV is genocide to Black trans communities, especially for Black trans women. Statistically speaking, over half of us is going to have an HIV diagnosis in our lifetime. and why my community, our community, is so impacted. And I always say there's no community of people on the face of the earth who is impacted more by HIV, especially here in the United States, than Black trans women, because we're a smaller group of people to begin with. So the negative side is somewhere between 53 and 56% will get an HIV diagnosis in our lifetime. The good news is 47% of us won't. With that being said, there is something, in public health, there's a term that we use that is called historical trauma. And historical trauma is a word that describes something that may have happened to you or to your mom or your dad or to your family or to your community or whomever. And it's something that just becomes a part of you. It is something that causes you grief. You have all ever heard of the white coat syndrome? When people go to the doctor, their blood pressure raises. Paula's a nurse, so she'd understand that. Well, that's part of historical trauma. Folks, it becomes part of your DNA. And for trans people, again, especially Black trans people, many of us have lived with so much violence and so much ignorance in our lives that that historical trauma becomes a part of our DNA. And so when we are in situations that there is intimate partner violence or disrespect or a whole bunch of other things that society would deem abnormal or negative, because they are, when we're in those situations, often we've just gotten so used to it. We've gotten so used to bullshit, we forget that it stinks sometimes. And so we accept stuff from the Black church, because at least they didn't put me out this time. They still gonna take my money.
Okay.
You know, so we'll accept that, because the last church literally had us just put me out of the door. And so that's all part of historical trauma. So we will take the fact that you will call me by the wrong gender, or that you will allow folks in your choir stand to point at me and make jokes when I walk into your edifice.
In the middle of the service.
In the middle of a service. Or that the pastor will change, the pastor, Troy, excuse me for calling, I'm going to call you Troy. The pastor will change his sermon in mid-sentence.
Oh, what?
To talk about you and folks just like you. He just may not know your name. Does that mean it's time to go,
Yes, thank you. Wonderful.
We will resume this when we come back.
Okay, we'll resume
Yes,
it.
we will. Are you having a good time? Are you enjoying it? Give our panelists and our hostess a hand. Wonderful, wonderful. It is commercial break. Now, Morton salt, the best salt, just kidding. Now listen, if you are enjoying this and having a wonderful time, the way we keep this rolling is funding. So reach into your pockets, your purses. It is time to give. This is a way that we bless our panelists. We give them a little something and thank them for coming. One day you will be a panelist as well. There is Julia making her way to the front. Thank you, Miss Julia. Thank you, guys. This is how we keep things going. We keep bringing these topics to you. So if you will, doesn't take a lot. If everybody do a little bit, we'll make it happen over and over. Thank you so much, guys. Look at that pastor being the first one. Thank you. Thank you for your giving, guys. We appreciate you. Thank you. We have some great plans. One day, we'd like to be serving you some wine. Maybe we'll even move this to a different venue. Who knows? But you will set the pace. Thank you so much. We're also planning for next month's Wind Down Wednesday, our self-care symposium. You won't want to miss that. If you don't know what self-care is or how to take care of yourself, we're going to show you how. Learn it here. We're also going to come back from this break, and we're going to ask some of those hard questions. You've got questions that are burning. This is your opportunity to ask them. I certainly do. Thank you so much. This is a bathroom break. This is the time. Get a bathroom break, get you some water. Make sure if you're sitting in the back, move up to the front. Thank you. Thank you for your giving. Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you. We'll get started again in about 3 minutes. You have about 3 minutes before we resume. Thank you. And we're walking. Thank you so much. I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Wind Down Wednesday. Good jazz, good conversation. Topics only here. First Wednesday, right here, Rehoboth Fellowship of Atlanta. Pastor Troy Sanders. If there is a burning topic and you think we won't talk about it, ask us. I dare you.
It's quiet, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good seeing you. You should have been up here on the
Thank you so much for keeping the schedule. Thank you.
Right.
2 minutes. And we're moving. Thank you.
You going next year?
Do not let the commercial break stop you from giving. I'm in the booth in the back. Please see me if you miss the giving. You are always welcome.
Yeah, but you are you.
I appreciate that. We had to be at the Capitol a lot because of the Medicaid expansion conversation. So I was
Wind down Wednesday. Wonderful. I see our panelists coming back in. Beautiful timing. Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, find your seats.
They had us till 12 midnight.
He could still very well sign. Before y'all go, we're going to take a panel, a group picture, okay?
We are 1 minute to starting. Remember, the screen is for advertising.
Okay.
We will start advertising in the next 60 days. You're welcome to go to the website, make room, the number 4, me.com. For visual graphics, I will do your verbal announcements, and you may also use the vendor tables in the narthex. Fancy word for lobby. And 5, 4, 3, 2, prepare your questions. We're live.
Welcome back, everybody. How y'all doing? Y'all ready to move forward? Before we move forward, I just want to say real quickly, in order for any of the violence and all of the marginalization and discrimination that trans people are experiencing, it's important for all of us to get involved. It's important for all of us to get registered and vote. Because when we vote for legislators that see us as human beings, then this will start changing. I know we've got a crazy person in the White House right now, but this too shall pass, and the mansion. So please, if you have not registered, please get registered. Your voice is very necessary. That's the only way that we're going to make some changes. And it's important for us trans people to also register and vote, honey. If you don't want to go to the polls, there's a thing called an absentee ballot. So don't be afraid and don't let someone take your power. All right. So we're going to move into the question and answer portion of our conversation. We didn't get to the trans people in hetero relationships. We're going to have to save that for another time, another date. So that was a juicy, yeah. So, yeah, yes, you can ask the question. So who's the first person that has a question? Yes. Make it a good one, Pastor, make it a good one.
I got a good one. So I want to first thank you all because what I see is the expressions of confidence and comfortability, but I'm also aware that you didn't start there probably. So I want to give kudos to you and your work. Thank you so much. The other question, the question that I have is one that might be a bit personal, but I think is essential for the conversation. I'd like to know, when did you know and how did you know that you were a trans or are a trans person? Not necessarily, because I knew I was gay before I named I was gay. And I struggled with that process between knowing and naming. What I'm really asking is, like, when did you know, and how did you know, if you don't mind sharing with us?
Yes. For me, I think the writing was always on the wall. When I looked back in retrospect, and I was like, okay, now this all adds up. But the light bulb going off moment for me probably was in 2016, because I had already come out as a gay man in February of 2016. I was like, this is still not it. And then about 6 or 7 months later is when I slowly kind of started identifying as trans somewhere within the spectrum. At first, for me, it was saying, well, I identify as partially male, partially female. So for a while, I kind of went between both. And then I said, well, this still doesn't feel like a fit. So then I settled on the fact that, the female expression for me felt authentic. And that didn't happen probably until 2017. And after that point, I never looked back. So it probably took me a good 2 or 3 years for it to really unfold. Because that was something that, unfortunately, my parents, in the background that I come from, which was extremely conservative, extremely, Christian in a traditional toxic sense, that wasn't talked about. Being trans, I didn't even know what that word meant until I hit my 20s. So for me, it was such a slow process because of the ignorance I had to work through. But then once I realized, it was like this, it all makes sense now. Like, I can finally put together pieces of the puzzle that I was not able to put together before because I had so much missing information. So.
There's a dissonance that exists because of the choices I made to fix what was happening with me. So I developed an alcohol and drug problem, and I didn't relate that to why it was that I needed that in my life. In retrospect, I wasn't connecting. My person in my experience wasn't connecting with the outside world. And a lot of this realization is completely in retrospect. Like, I had no idea what was going on at the time. When I look back on it, it kind of makes sense that I've ended where I have, but not until I've gotten here. When I knew, it manifested in me in 2008, curled up in a ball in a fetal position, crying hysterically. And my partner at the time didn't know what was wrong with me and called my sponsor. What realization I had was that how I lived in the world, how I experienced the world, didn't match the gender that I was. And it took me to have a year of sobriety for me to have met and become really close and acquainted with God, in order for me to even recognize that that was a problem. What kept happening was that in my head a different story was playing than was actually playing out in the world. Except part of my program was to make those match. Part of the program of recovery was to make those match. And finally recognizing, and even so, I didn't realize that trans was a thing also until I was halfway through undergraduate. So until I was about 20. 19 or 20, right? That it was even a thing that existed in the world. And I don't know if it was because I was so disconnected from the world or if it also just wasn't something that you see. And so it was a tumultuous and scary situation when I knew and then looked for confirmation.
But you found a way to deal with it and adjust your thinking, your way of living.
Right. So the charge was then for me to figure out how to make the outsides match the inside. And be happy doing it. Well, the happiness was coming. Part of the happiness was already in the fact that I desired for the outside to match the inside, and being okay with wanting that. Being okay with wanting that for myself, right? Without paying attention to what so-and-so and whatchamajig are saying or thinking or feeling about it. But you know what's important for me if I want to live is I need to make the outside match the inside. Yeah.
So I'll make this short because I know there were a lot of questions. But for me, I jokingly, well, somewhat jokingly, tell people I became trans when I moved to Atlanta. Because before then, I was just living my life. And as I told you earlier, when I saw how people who I felt we had a kinship and were living similar lives who identified as trans were being treated, suddenly it would be cowardice of me not to represent for us. There are at least two people in the room that I've known for about 20 years. And at every part pre-transition and at every part during transition, I think both of them would agree. I haven't really changed. I act the exact same way. I always had expectations in relationships, and not just not just romantic relationships, but even relationships with my friends and with my family. I am the same person. My body transitioned more than anything else. I remember identifying as a gay male once. I probably did. Out loud, I remember saying gay once. On paper, I did it because I was taking a survey or something and they were paying to do it, you know, and college is expensive.
Get them coins, girl.
Them coins, right.
By all means.
But I remember once saying it, and I remember at various points in my life of my friends telling me, oh, you're going to be beautiful one day, or you're going to make a fabulous woman. And I took that, and it was, I remember this last part, when, I can't give you an exact age, but I love words. And I remember, I think it was in middle school, one of our vocabulary words was pendulous. P-N-D-E-L-O-U-S. And I remember, and you all have probably heard me say this, that as a kid I wanted pendulous breasts.
What?
I didn't realize that I wanted to be trans. I just knew that I wanted pendulous. Pendulous means large, very large, enormous. And that was how, even then, I described what I saw for myself now. I didn't know how I was going to get there or what that meant, but that's how I saw myself even then. And I told an auntie, I said, I don't see myself as an old man. And I couldn't, even as a kid, I didn't understand that. Now I do.
You put it out into the universe, honey.
I did, and I put some work into it, too.
Yes.
Pendulous breasts.
Yes, honey, pendulous. And so for me, I always knew that I was different from my brother and my male cousins. I always wanted to be the mama when we played house and, husband and wife played house. There was never a question about my femininity. There was never a time where I came out and just said, I am who I am. I knew that when I read those Leviticus condemnation to hell verses, that wasn't who I was. I didn't feel like I was a homosexual. I didn't know what trans meant at the time until I grew older and started to meet other people and do research. I never, said I was gay or anything other than female. So, and here we are today.
So I don't have a question. I do have a comment and a story. I am a lesbian married to a trans man with a...
Give it up, honey. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
With an 8-year-old trans daughter. Now, because of your struggle and your fight and your name, when I sat across from the therapist with my daughter, and the therapist asked Serena, how do you know that you're a girl? Serena turned to me and said, Mommy, do you have to tell people
okay, honey,
why you're a woman?
That's what I'm talking about.
So the therapist said, she doesn't have to answer that. we're going to go ahead and clear you. So she does not identify as trans. She identifies as she and her and girl, and one day as woman, and it's because of your fight and your struggle. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We need more black parents like her. You know, so many times, you know, we get kicked out of our homes and, you know, just have to go through all this unnecessary stuff because we have a parent who's ashamed or scared of what the neighbor is going to say or everybody else instead of just loving their child. So thank you. Let's give Tangela a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Hey, good evening. So thank you all for being here. I think it's a really good conversation. I kind of have a statement and maybe a question, but I do have a question. I want to know how you experience gay and lesbian people who identify, I'm gay, I'm lesbian. And the reason I ask that is because certainly there are conversations when gay and or lesbian people are together about the trans community from time to time.
I would love to be a fly on that wall.
No, you wouldn't.
You may not.
Honey.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
I would. Just
So the reviews are kind of mixed on that, you know. So it's real interesting, number one, that gay and lesbian people feel that they have the privilege or are authorized to even give a review.
Come on.
Then I think, because I've been a lesbian for 36 years out, and we start talking about when did you know, old lady who died when I was 3 years old, she was 90-something, told my grandmother, you better watch that one. She one of them. This is years, she died in like 1970. But she was right. You didn't need to watch me, but she was right on the other part. So, but you know, here's the deal. So I've gone through my own struggle, and it's very interesting to me now in 2019, it's a whole lot easier to be a lesbian than it was in 1983. And so it seems that gays and lesbians feel like they've made it. And so,
okay.
But see, I'm still black. I'm still a woman. I'm Southern. I'm all these things that people can discriminate against me about. But then I'm looking for a reason to discriminate against you because I've got all this. I can't discriminate. So now I'm going to discriminate against the trans. That's all I got left.
Oppress people, oppress other people.
There you go.
At least I'm better than them.
At least I'm not trans. I could be trans, mama. Oh. Right? Okay?
Yeah.
So I want to know how you all experience gay and lesbian people, those relationships. And the other reason why I ask is because there seems to be some segregation, even in our church, where I sense that where the gays and lesbians don't necessarily do, unless they're doing it, I don't know it. Nobody's inviting me. And so, you know, so I don't see why we just can't all be together. I don't care if it's a trans person with the lesbian, you know, with a, you know, however that works. You know.
People are people.
People are people, and that's that. And I had one other question I wanted to ask you all. I can't remember, but that's it. So you can speak to how you experience gay and lesbian people, and kind of that segregation. Thank you.
Somebody said Tori, honey. Get the mic, girl.
I love my Bristers, and that's a brother who's also my sister. And I say this with awe, and I realize every lesbian woman is not a dyke, but I say that with love. I say it with love. If you're in my circle, you understand. I love my lesbian friends, and I love my gay friends, because those were the people who, through all of my transitions, have been the most supportive. My two best friends, one is a lesbian and one is both very masculine, ironically. One is a self-identified lesbian or fruity pebble boy, and the other is, that's her term, and the other is a naturally very masculine gay male. And for both of them, when I was like, okay, so this is who I am, that day, and not one day after was there ever a pronoun slip. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't anything. I got that from two gay people. I didn't get that from my heterosexual family members. I didn't get that from my mother or my father. I got that from two folks who were part of the extended LGBT community. And I think Again, just like in the larger society, there are a bunch of gay people who just think trans people are really, really gay. You're just like super gay. And so there's some people who still think that, or they think it doesn't take all that. And so, but that's based on how they feel about themselves and what the only as far as they can see. I think people, period, regardless as to how you identify, ultimately we want to give people the respect, first of all, and then the freedom to simply be who it is that God intended them to be. And if that means that it was a transversing of their gender identity, then that's what it was. I was going to say transition, but I used transversing right there. You like that? Good. I thought you might like that. I love the gays.
Okay.
So I also believe that we sometimes forget that folks that are trans just don't identify with the GLB.
And that's okay.
Right, and it's okay, except we're expecting them to just mesh in with the rest of the letters. But the beginning of the joint is about who you. I was like, wait, where am I? Oh, they don't know what I was gonna say. The first beginning of the letter is about who you fucking. But like, the T don't have nothing to, like, that's.
Shut your mouth.
That's irrelevant. That is not part of the reality. What part didn't they get? The G, the L, and the B is about who you fucking. The T is about my life, how I identify, what I'm living as, what's going on with me. That ain't got nothing to do with who I'm having sex with. So like, maybe for some people the GLB don't fit. So like, they're not coming to the barbecue when you invite them. That's not a comfortable space for them. They're not really into that. Now some, like, I enjoy queer folks. Like you said, I love the gays. But, and also, when I don't want to deal with them no more, I don't. So like, I have these different pockets and kinds of friends and people that I'm with, and they don't mix. Me and my wife threw 3 separate engagement parties, to be clear. Because the folks over here didn't need to mix with the people over there, and my family did not need to mix with any of them. Just don't.
No mixed company, honey.
No. I mean, sometimes in some spaces and some people, right? Like, I can ask my cousin to come to that. I can have my sisters come to this. But, I mean, and my mom can go to anything. But, like, there's just some things that you can't mix those crowds with. And the whole acronym it only kind of makes sense to me together, because they're like, let's clump all the queer folks together. But it doesn't actually do what people are expecting it to do in crowds and friendship and company.
My experience with gay and lesbian people has been fairly positive. You know, some of the biggest supporters I've had have actually been Black gay men, and I don't know if it's because I used to be a part of that community, so they still kind of see me as an extended family member, which can sometimes be problematic. But, you know, I think by and large, my experience has been very positive, and they've been some of the biggest supporters I've had. I think the only thing I would run into occasionally that would be an issue for me with gay or lesbian people who are cis is almost like the endless questions that come about trans bodies, the policing of trans bodies. How I should present myself, how I should not present myself, that's nobody's business. But aside from that, I would say the support has been very overwhelming. So,
yeah. And it's something very important to remember. It's not our responsibility to make you comfortable or to keep trying to get you to understand we're here and we're not going anywhere. You know, why do we have to continue to apologize or justify our existence just because you're uncomfortable? And just like a lot of people talk about us, those people are talking about lesbian, gay, bisexual, your gay selves, lesbian selves, bisexual selves, just the way you're talking about us. So what goes around, unfortunately, comes around. So, yes.
How's everybody doing? Hey, Tori. Let me ask this question right here. Now, with the three that are sitting on the stage, which I don't ever hear about this in the trans world, so let me ask it so you can give me an answer. So is it, well, I've never seen it. I can't say I don't know about it, but I've never seen the trans female and the trans male becoming a couple.
That happens every day, honey.
I'm just saying, I don't see it
every day.
I know it goes on, but I don't see it a lot. So kind of help me out with that. Is it? I don't see it. I just don't see it. So I know I got a nice.
It's in your
right
face,
here.
but you don't. Yeah, you
and
don't.
I may
realize
not know
it, but it's there.
Okay. Okay, so
more than you probably would think.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I guess one day I have some friends like that, but I'm just saying because I'm kind of open, but I just don't see it a lot, so I'm not scared to say what I don't see.
We'll be your friends, right,
okay.
y'all?
So, yeah, Tori is great. Tori is great. But I have a question for Tatiana. Yeah. Okay, you said you attend Morehouse and I can't recall if you said you had a degree or getting that degree.
I'm in my senior year.
Okay, and awesome. So, my question to you, with getting that degree, is it in your masculine name or would it be in the female name? Because I haven't had a chance to really just go up and ask somebody, are you having a problem if you have to change it from male to female? Are they giving you a problem with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I went through my full legal and medical process. Mm-hmm. So because of that, the school does recognize me as a woman. They have to. So my degree will be written in my new legal name, which is Tatiana Raphael. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
And there are trans people who have problems with being recognized. A lot of society feels like if you don't have gender reassignment surgery, then you're not considered who you represent or who you are. So it's important to understand that not all trans people desire to have gender reassignment surgery. Some trans people, that's who they are and that's what they want, and that's okay. And for those who don't, then that's okay also. You don't have to do something so extreme that you don't want to do to make other people okay with who you are. One more question. Make this a good one.
Hi. This question is for Tatiana. I read that there was a survey that went out on the Morehouse campus, kind of like surveying the members or certain students or groups about the acceptance of the transgender community there. Nobody knows, but I have applied to become a Morehouse student, and I wanted to know whatever came of the survey.
Well, I'm not allowed to discuss a lot of it, but I'm just going to go ahead. I might get in trouble, but...
it's just us talking, honey. Go
if
ahead.
It's on Facebook
Spill the
Live,
tea.
it might have to be paused.
Yes, honey. Spill the tea.
Because I want to be honest, but I don't want to get in trouble.
It's paused.
I'll say...
We paused it.
I had a meeting recently with... Is it paused? Is it paused?
Yes.
Okay. I was called into a meeting recently with the president of Morehouse, and he read to me the draft of the new policy, which is supposed to be released this month. So essentially in that policy, the door will be closed for trans women. So from my understanding, from what the president told me, I'll be the first and only fully transitioned trans woman to get a degree from that school in the history of the school. So after that, they'll allow trans men to attend the school. It could be changed. The policy is supposed to be released sometime around mid-April. So the draft I saw may have been edited some. But they will, in his words, they will continue to use the language of brotherhood, which means when they send out emails or campus letters, it will say brother or sir, which will erase me, of course. But after April 30th, anybody who wants to enroll at Morehouse has to identify as a male, and they have to continue that identification throughout their obtaining a degree.
And that was what I read. It was the statement was that some of the opinion was that they didn't have a problem with the F to M's, but they had a problem with the M to F's because it is supposed to be a facility for males. Just like with the same situation with the young man from Spelman who graduated from Spelman. So they didn't have a problem with the F to M's because I guess, you know, we still fit the stigma of the males. Exactly. We're less identifiable. But thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
And in full disclosure, Spelman now accepts trans women. So there's give and take.
So we are making changes. We are making changes, and so we have to celebrate those changes also because we hear all the gloom and doom stuff. So we must applaud the positive steps that's being taken within our lifetime. And I just want to say, Trailblazer, thank you so much for holding your head up, sister, and walking in there on that campus and getting your degree and not letting anything stop you. Yes, honey. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment that I would like to say. Being a part of Tabernacle for over 40 years, I've seen the transition. We've always had gay. We had a trans. And then when Bishop came, the church changed to love and acceptance. And then a lot of people left the church. And my thing is because my sister, the one that was next to me, she had 2 boys. Her baby boy was gay, and her oldest son was gay. But their dad put them out, because I'm from Atlanta. If you're from Atlanta in the 80s, Midtown, they ate up those boys. They died with HIV. So I have a special place in my heart, because people say, why are you still there? I said, God has a place for me to be here, because of the love that I have for you all. And I just want to let everybody know that my love is genuine. And you all continue to be yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. And the next time somebody asks you why you're still there, tell them to mind their business. And get out of your Kool-Aid. Okay. All right. So I want to say thank you. Give it up to our panelists, our dynamic panelists. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing your time. This is going to educate, and this is going to save someone's life. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. You could have been anywhere else this evening, and you came out. So thank you, thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us at Wind Down Wednesday. Don't forget, next Wind Down Wednesday, we have Self-Care Symposium. A final thought. We embrace community, because without community, there is no liberation. Thank you for coming, and have a great evening.